show. That does mean, of course, that we're into the last interview for the day, trusting that you've enjoyed all the other interviews we had lined up for you today. Right now, we're going to be talking to Bronwyn Jones. She is the owner of Bokashi Bran, and it's about being environmentally friendly, concerned, and it's all to do with global warming. Let's hear from Bronwyn. Morning, Bronwyn, or good afternoon, shall I say. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to all your listeners.
Hi. Welcome, Bronwyn. I've just given a brief intro onto who you are. Bronwyn Jones from Bokashi Bran. Before we even get into the product and your concerns about global warming, who is Bronwyn and what led her to this point in her life?
Wow. So I've been through the University of Life. I think I can say I've achieved one or two things in my life. I'm a little over 50, so I've been around for a while. My education background is in marketing. I have an MBA from Wales University, and my whole career has actually been in the printing industry. I worked in a family business for about 20 years. And then I moved to Johannesburg, where I was exposed to Bokashi, tried it out. I've been a passionate, avid vegetable gardener my whole life. And when I heard about Bokashi, that you could compost cooked food, protein, and dairy, that just seemed too good to be true for me. So I tried out the product, and it was incredible. So I spent a lot of time researching and figuring out how to manufacture the product. Got a lot of input from a guy in Hawaii who helped me to develop the product. It was originally developed in Japan. And then because I was spending so much time on Bokashi and in my vegetable garden and in my compost pile, my father, who owned the printing company, fired me.
Okay.
So we joke, he didn't fire me, he freed me. He freed me to follow a passion that I didn't actually realize that I had. And the passion has grown, and obviously the more you learn, the more you realize where the problem is. And I think food waste has become the new plastic. You know, we are concerned about plastic, and there are so many causes. There's so many things to be concerned about in the world, from rhino poaching to hunger. There's just so many, and you have to choose your fight. And the more that I started understanding the product and how unnecessary the waste of food is, it became so much more apparent of we need to start spending some time understanding this. So when I started eight and a half years ago, there was very little conversation being had about food waste. It was all about plastic in the waste industry. I always laugh and think, well, you guys who recycle plastic and paper and glass and tin, you guys should have spent the beginnings part separating food waste at source, because by separating food waste at source, everything else is so much simpler to recycle. It hasn't been contaminated, and it just becomes so much easier to recycle everything else. So if you look at the food waste that is being wasted in South Africa, they talk about 11.5 million tons of food waste
annually. So what happens? You know, we know they're landfills, and I've had someone from City Council come to talk to me about landfills and saying to me that we now have a situation of the landfills being full, and there are no other spaces to create more landfill sites, because once you've used up these sites, they're not usable. You can't use it for anything else. You can't even use it for housing or anything for that matter. I didn't think that we have a problem with food. I kind of figured food is biodegradable. And if it does go to a specific landfill, it will just degrade naturally and possibly feed the soil in that area and have very fertile soil where people could possibly put up farms or gardening.
I wish that was the case. And unfortunately, landfilling is our easiest and at the moment cheapest option. And you're right, we are running out of landfill space. The city of Johannesburg, they reckon within 3 years we won't have a landfill space. This is a freight train heading for us so fast. But as far as, well, it's just food waste and it's going to make the soil fertile. I wish it was the case. But what happens is when food waste goes to landfill, it gets dumped with all the plastic and everything else on top of it. So it becomes anaerobic and it generates methane gas. So but besides that, it also generates leachates, which is the water that drains off the. What happens is all the bad bacteria, the pathogens, seep into our groundwater and contaminate our groundwater. But the methane gas, more importantly, is it's always historically been said to be 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide, CO2. When the climate change scientists started studying global warming and realizing how bad the situation was getting, they said, well, they're 25 times more harmful than CO2. That was worked over a 100-year period. Scientists then said, well, do we even have 100 years left? What if this global warming thing happens faster than we anticipate? So they recalculated all their figures over a 20-year period. Methane gas is 84 times more harmful than CO2. So for every ton of food waste that goes to a landfill site, 627 kilograms of CO2 equivalent emissions is released into our atmosphere. So food waste is actually the third largest contributing factor to global warming.
And it doesn't have to be so. It doesn't have to be so. There are solutions. One of those solutions is what you've come up with. Tell us about it.
Our solution is very simple and very scalable, from the small household kitchen to right up to commercial kitchens. So it's a product called Bokashi. As I said, it was developed in Japan. It's all organic. It's a wheaten bran that has been infused with effective microorganisms. It takes us about 4 months to to produce our Bokashi. So the Bokashi is used to treat the food waste. We sprinkle it over the food waste in a simple layering process. So the microbes ferment the food waste. So if I had to throw food waste into a dustbin, within a week, you've either got maggots because the flies have found it and laid their eggs, especially in summer. You've got terrible smells, and it attracts rats and vermin, which spread disease. So food waste has got so many negative things that are going on with it. So with this product, Bokashi, you treat the food waste. It stays in a sealed bucket, so there's no smells. It ferments the food waste. And you can leave the food waste in a bucket for 6-8 months if you want. If you go on holiday, imagine me opening a bucket of food waste for you after 8 months. I think you would run away. But with Bokashi, you can smell it. It's got almost like a cidery smell. It's like a sweet pickled smell. Food waste still looks exactly like it was when it went in. So a pineapple still looks like a pineapple, tomato, etc. But it's been pickled, just like you would pickle a pickled onion or a gherkin. So then what happens is it started the breaking down process. When you then, your bucket is full, whether it's in the home kitchen or commercial kitchen, it goes into a compost pile. So the three microbes that we use in Bokashi is yeast, which is the fermentation starter, lactic acid bacteria, which is what they use to make yogurts and cheeses. And then those two are both anaerobic microbes. So we keep it in a sealed drum with no oxygen, and that's what ferments the food waste. And that's why you're not going to get a smell from the food waste. The third microbe is a phototropic microbe. It's an aerobic microbe. Very important for the combining of your nitrogen and carbon in the composting environment. So your carbon being your leaf scrapings, your twigs that have gone into your compost pile, garden waste, and then your nitrogen, obviously the food waste. Mix it up. So where a tradition, if you know anything or have read any information about composting, they always say keep meat products out of a compost pile. Not with Bokashi. Bokashi, you can put everything in, from your chicken bones, fish bones, prawn shells, coffee grounds, tea bags, eggshells. It doesn't matter. Anything organic, anything that came from the earth, we want to go back to the earth because we want to put the nutrients back into our soils. And where traditional composting would normally take between 7 and 10 months before you can use that compost, with Bokashi, because of how the microbes are speeding up the process, 7 to 10 weeks, you've got all your composting ready to go back in, with very important improvements in your trace elements of your potassium, phosphorus. All those elements are improved by over 120% within 7 weeks.
Okay, so Bronwyn, if I'm now interested in this product, we all go through a lot of food waste. How is it packaged? How much of investment in terms of money outlay would it, and I'm sure that even flat dwellers can invest in something like this. So I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you. So let's assume I live in a suburb and I have a large garden. So that's going to serve me very well because I'm going to have really rich compost to use every season or however often I need the compost. People living in flats who invest in this Bokashi Bran, what's going to happen to their waste that has now been turned into compost? What happens? Hopefully it doesn't land up in a landfill. And number 3, costs and ease of accessing all of the stuff.
So there are a couple of brands out there with Bokashi that's on the market at the moment. Fairly inexpensive. Your setup, you ideally you want 2 buckets, because when your first bucket is full, you want to continue the process. So you'll get your second bucket and it'll go into rotation. To get your starter kit started, you're in for a little bit over 500 Rand. That's the starter bit. And then every month you're in for about 60 Rand a month to treat your food waste. It is available online for collection. Just and from a commercial point of view, actually, let's leave the commercial for a little bit later on in the discussion. So if you were had your own compost pile in your garden, you layer your bucket with food waste, a sprinkle of Bokashi, food waste, sprinkle of Bokashi, and then it goes into your compost pile. You simply open a hole inside a compost heap, put the food waste inside and close it up. So every month or so, you would turn your compost pile and take the compost back into your garden. If you were a flat dweller, a little bit more tricky, but also assumably you're going to have less food waste because you're living in a flat. There's normally fewer people living in the flat. So a very similar situation would happen if you had even some pot plants on your balcony or in your home. The food waste again gets treated with Bokashi. You take a little hand spade, make little trenches inside the pot plants, and you add your food waste into the pot plants, which is obviously adding nutrients back into that soil. Your plants will love it. Then also what has come through in South Africa very recently is from about September last year, the new norms and standards have been released for composting in South Africa. And it's very encouraging to see from a waste perspective. You don't need a waste license any longer to run a compost pile, a composting facility, as long as you're not doing more than 10 tons a day. So they really are encouraging composting, home composting. I personally like to see community gardens coming together. There's so many value adds in that in terms of secure services for waste collection. You know, if everybody was on the Bokashi system, there's no smells, there's no rats. You could literally have a food waste collection once a month for home dwellers. And if we look at the households, we've got 14.5 million households in South Africa. Each household, through research, is producing on average about 20 kilograms of food waste a month. That's 3.5 million tons of food waste per month that's being wasted. So again, if we go back to our greenhouse gas emissions, 2 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions is released into atmosphere. That's really important. If we composted that, we save 98% in greenhouse gas emissions. We're a signatory to the Paris Agreement, and let's face it, Eskom's not going away in a hurry. I'm glad to see they're looking at sustainable solutions for our energy needs. But as far as us reaching our global warming targets that we need to set, how are we going to do that? Food waste is the easiest option for us to say, well, we're going to compost. For composting, only 10 kilograms of CO2 equivalent emissions versus 627.
Okay, so now you have sold an amazing concept to me. I think I want to invest in something called Bokashi Bran. Who and how do I get hold of this? I think you indicated about 500 or 600 rands a month. Or was that the startup cost? What exactly does the pack or this Bokashi Bran, how is it? Does it come with the bins? How is it packaged? What do I need to know, etc.?
So for the 500, you get two buckets. There's a straining tray.
What literage would it be? The bucket?
It's a 25-liter bucket.
Right.
There's a straining tray in the bucket with a tap. So the straining tray will separate the liquids from the solids. So as the food waste starts to ferment and it takes in all the microbes from the Bokashi, it drips into the bottom of the bucket. That then gets tapped off, and it is an incredibly healthy, concentrated organic plant food that we dilute and we feed to our plants. It also not only adds the nutrients back into the soil, but it also improves the quality of the soil. It improves the aeration. It adds the soil structure, the Bokashi composting. So there's a lot of value add to it. To get it, you can log on to our website. It's www.bokashibran.co.za. That's BOKASHIBRAN.co.za. And we've got an online shop. We deliver anywhere in South Africa. It's also available in Builders Warehouse. So you can pop into your local Builders Warehouse. It's in the gardening section and get from there. So very available.
Okay, Bronwyn, we've almost come to the end of the interview. Let me ask you this question. You indicated that you're probably 8 years in this field now. How has it taken off in South Africa? Are people getting more and more excited about it? Are you happy with the uptake?
Definitely. Unfortunately, COVID has set a lot of industries back, in particular the hospitality industry. Before lockdown, Bokashi Bran was diverting about 50 tons of food waste from landfill per month. We service the Soho Sun Hotel Group, City Lodge Group, and we had run pilot sites with them. Silver Star Casino, Gold Reef City, Suncoast Casino. They've all been with me for over 4 years now. So the system works in a commercial environment as well. And because of a lot of the other smaller hotels, the success we've had with them, they had agreed to now roll it out through the group, which we were starting to do. Obviously, with hospitality industry closing, that has been severely hamstrung with the process. But from the domestic side, with people going into lockdown, the reverse happened. So all of a sudden, well, we need to start growing our vegetables. We need to start doing something with our food waste. There's a huge focus on it. So the domestic market has taken off this year, while the commercial side has slumped. But I do believe the commercial side's coming back on. We're losing about 140 tons, 140,000 tons of food waste a month from the hospitality sector. And it's from a commercial side, it's more important to have a look at what is the cost of wasting food. People in a commercial kitchen are not focused on the food waste. They focus on what does it cost for us to dispose of the food waste. That's the cheap part. But it's what is the cost of wasting food? And the Bokashi system aims to bring commercial kitchens into focus of saying, why have we got so much food waste? What can we reduce in terms of what's going into the bin? And there's a lot of stuff that traditionally hasn't been used in commercial kitchens. The inside of a cauliflower, for instance, the heart of the cauliflower, that was always thrown away. They cut the little florets off and they used that, but the heart of the cauliflower was never used. Now there's a focus of saying, wait a minute, that's not food waste. Let's repurpose it. Let's either put it into stock. Have I run over?
Yes, unfortunately, we almost come to the end of the interview. That obviously brings another issue to the table, and that is food security. So apart from, looking at landfill and emissions and global warming, it forces us, or should force us, to start looking at the issue of food security and how much of wastage, each and every one of us are responsible for. You indicated 14 million households in South Africa. Imagine if each one of these households could save X amount of food, or probably cut down on food wastage and repurpose, apart from Bokashi Bran, X amount of people less will go hungry every day. So,
Absolutely.
there's just so many dimensions to this issue around food wastage, but it was wonderful talking to you.
Just on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 9 of the 17 of those sustainability goals are directly related to food waste. It just shows how significantly important this conversation is, that everybody needs to understand. It has so many facets of this conversation. It's not only the waste, it's the food loss, it's the forwarding of food. There is so many elements that need to be discussed and the focus on. That's why I say food waste has become the new plastic.
Absolutely wonderful talking to you, and keep holding up that flag as high as you possibly can. Have a wonderful week, and God bless.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that then brings us to the end of the show today. Thank you indeed for being with me. Hope you've enjoyed my company as much as I've enjoyed being with you. Till the next time, as always, it is God bless. Take care on the roads and see you, see you at next week at the same time, same place. So till then, Godspeed.